Hi friends, today I am going to give a seminar on the topic of EEG. EEG stands for electroencephalography. That is, encephalo, the term means a brain. It will represents the electrical activity of the brain. That is in the graphy in the term which refers to the graphical form. The electrical activity of the brain will be represented in the graphical form. That is, it is an non-invasive method. Non-invasive method in the sense it will not involve any introduction of the instruments inside the body. It will not be introduced into our skin, and it will record the electrical activity of the brain. It will be painless, and the electrical activity will be recorded by placing those electrodes. That electrodes will be placed on the scalp, which will be interconnected, and together it will represent the electrical activity in the graphical form, and it will be represented in the wavy lines, and the output will be in the two forms. That is, one is in the computer screen and the other one is in the paper form. It will be in order of microvolts, and the EEG waves will have the frequency range of 0.1 to 100 Hz, and the amplitude range will be 2 to 200 microvolts. It EEG will measure the activity of electrical activity of group of neurons, and it will not record activity of single neuron. The activity of single neuron will be recorded by intracellular method. That is a separate concept. And next, the waveform. The waveform of the EEG will represent the electrical activity of the neuron. That is cortical neuron. That the neurons will be present in the cortical regions. That activity will be represented in the EEG. There are two types of recordings in EEG. One is bipolar and unipolar. Bipolar in the sense it will have two electrodes, which the electrodes will have two charges. One is positive and negative. That is, both the electrodes will be in the active site of the brain. That is, active site in the sense it will do many chemical reactions. In that site, these electrodes will be placed. Next, in unipolar there is only there are two electrodes in which the electrode will have only one charge, only the positive charge, and that one electrode will be in active site and the other electrode will be placed at the earlobe. In case of coma patients, it will always monitor and watch for any abnormal muscle activity, and it will ask the subject, that is the person or any other patients, to open the eyes for 10 seconds and ask them to close the eyes. Next, we will be seeing the main part of this EEG, that is the placement of electrodes, which will be the main thing to record the electrical activity of the brain, right? And it will form one of the conventional system, that is 10 to 20 percentage rule. In this, there are three important electrodes which will be used to form this rule. That is, first one is nasion, which will be placed closer to the nose. It is the top view of the skull, in which the nasion will be placed closer to the nose, and the inion which will be placed back of the skull, and the preauricular points, that is, which will be placed near to the earlobes. This rules defines that this inion and nasion forms a midline, and the electrodes which is closer to the nasion is placed at a distance of 10 percentage. Next to that, 20 percentage distance will be covered. Like this manner, every electrodes will be placed. First one will be at a 10% distance, and the second next one will be 20 percentage distance. Like this, every electrodes will be placed above the skull. Next, some of the other terms also have been followed. That is PCFT, where is P is parietal, which will be placed in the parietal region of the skull, and C central region, that is CZ4, and F, which is frontal, when T is a temporal. And there is two terms, even and odd, which has a prefix, which has a suffix of even terms and a prefix of odd terms. The term which has a suffix of even term, that is T8 or C4, will record the right half of the brains. That recordings will represent the right half of the brain. That, and the suffix which has all terms will represent the recordings from the left half of the brain, that is T9, C3, etc., etc. Next, how EEG will be working. It is a basic part of the brain. It is a cortical layer in which the blue neurons and the red neurons are synapsed together. And above the skull, this electrode thing will be placed. From that only the electrical activity will be recorded. So during this electrical activity, the cations which are present inside the red neurons will have positive charges. That is, the cations are in flux inside this red neurons. Due to the flux inside this red neurons, there is a large buildup of positive charges inside the neurons. Due to this positive charges inside this red neurons, there will be a development of negative charges outside of this red neurons. So this development of positive charges and negative charges, that is the changes of these charges, this delta change of charges will be detected by EEG. And during this detection, the downward fluctuation in the graphical form will represent the negative charge, and the upward fluctuation is represents the positive charge. And it will represent the result in the graphical form, right? And that waves will be differentiated into five waves, that are delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. This alpha waves are having the frequency of 8 to 13 hertz, and it will be having the amplitude between 50 to 100 microvolt, and it will be present in the adults. And these kind of waves will be recorded when the person is at the rest state or when the eyes are closed, and it will be found in the occipital region. And beta waves and the beta waves will be found in the found in the adults, and it will be recorded mental activity, and it will be found in the frontal region. The theta waves, which will have the frequency between 5 to 7, and the amplitude will be above 15 microvolt, and it will be recorded in the children's and drowsy adults and emotional distress. Occipital means front of the head. Next, delta waves, it will be having the frequency between 2 to 4 hertz, and amplitude which will be above micro 50 microvolt, and it will be found in the children's when they are under sleep. And now let us see the entire block diagram of an electroencephalography, that is the working of the machine, that is EEG machine. First, subject head with 10 to 20 electrode system. The waves from this electrodes will be sent to the electrode montage selector, that is electrode montage selector. First, the montages. What is mean by the montages? Montages are the patterns of connections. The electrodes will follow a pattern in which the electrodes are connected, and it has some recording channels with it. This montage selector will allow the user to select the desired electrode pair, which electrode pair they want to record. It will allow them to select their own desired pair. Okay. Next, it will always follow the symmetrical 10 to 20 percentage placement system, and this EEG signals will be transmitted from the electrodes, and it will be sent to the montage selector. Next to that, after montage selector, there will be amplifiers and filters. These amplifiers and filters, what will be the use of these filters? It will be used to filter out the noise present in the brain. During recording, there will be some of the muzzle artifacts, right? That is noise. To filter that noise, we use filters, and This function is done by a bank of filters. The EEG machines will have many bank of filters, and these filters will do that activity. And the amplifiers which are used here also to improve the amplitude levels, which will give the best results of the electrical activity of the brain, so that it will improve the amplitude levels of the EEG waveforms. Next to that, we will have an ADC, that is analog to digital converters. First electrode system that will send the electrical waves to the electrode mounted selector. Then it will be sent it to amplifiers and filters, and this will be sent it to analog to digital converters. Analog to digital converters, why it is used? First, it will, if we want the output in the computer screen, the computer only needs the digital input, right? Computer can understand only the digital input. But we send the waves in analog form, so that for the understanding of the computer, we send the analog to digital converter, which will convert the analog signal into digital. That is zeros and ones, which could be understood by the computers. So, this will convert the EEG signal into digital forms, which can be stored by the computer for future reference. And the another thing is writing recorder and paper drive. If we want the output in the paper form, we use this writing recorder. That is, this recorder will be a chart paper. This will have one synchronous motor, and this will do the writing thing of the electrical activity of our brain. It has the clear representation of the EEG waveform. Next, finally, we could see the advantages. That is, it is non-invasive, that it cannot be introduced into our skin, and it is painless, so that it is painless, and it has lower cost, and it is portable. We can carry it anywhere easily. And the disadvantage is the high noise ratio. High noise ratio, there will be noise, so that only we are using filters, but beyond that we have some high noise ratio. And it has not very exact measuring. It will have less resolution, okay. It won't give any exact measuring. And the applications are epilepsy, brain death testing, and various cancer sleep disorders, example insomnia. And it has sleep, and will detect the sleep paralysis, right? It means inability to move during full consciousness. Next, it will is to detect the chronic hypersomnia, that is either excessive sleep or sleepiness. Okay, that's it for this topic, and thank you.